Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee sits on the House Oversight Committee. He has seen the documents. He's a Republican expected to maybe be part of the impeachment inquiry into President Biden. So, Congressman, can you summarize in 60 seconds for people who are kind of lost your biggest concern about Hunter and President Biden?
Just the fact that the president has said, first of all, he said his son received no income from China. He didn't know who these people were. And on down the line, he's never met with them. Now we come to find out he has met with them. He wrote this gentleman that apparently was in charge of sending this wire to President Biden's house, listing him as the beneficiary when Hunter didn't even live at the house at the time. And this is the same gentleman who they wrote a college recommendation for his daughter. And he is the one who is one of those that's in charge of one of the funds that's buying up a lot of American farmland. So there's some real concerns there. And I know that a lot of the folks in the media say there's no connection, but the president just keeps lying about it, or maybe he's forgetting. But it stands to reason there is something going on here, and that now we're seeing more and more. And it's not by accident this stuff's coming out. You're seeing a lot of Democrats jump ship on him as well.
Let me channel Abby Lowell for a moment, who would probably point out that Hunter Biden had no fixed residence. So maybe that's why he, put down his father's home, and that we haven't seen any direct evidence presented by investigators or members of Congress showing that President Biden himself benefited monetarily. But we have seen evidence coming out.
That is not accurate.
If I could just finish my question, sir, real quick. I'm sorry. Can I just finish my question? We do know there were more than a dozen flights on Air Force Two. And then there's this, which I wanted to ask you about, because you might know more than most of us. Can you explain the 2.8 carat diamond from the Chinese energy executive? What was that about?
That's a good question. And of course, he received the exact amount in a wire transfer of a Porsche that he just bought just maybe a day before as well in a transaction. So I don't know about all. I'm not sure all the details, but again, it was another gift. You've got wire transfers to the president's minor grandchildren. So there's more to this, and then there's no evidence that they paid any taxes at all. So you and I sell $600 worth of stuff on eBay, and we get a letter from the IRS. The Biden family has over $20 million plus dollars, maybe a lot more than that, where you keep finding more and more coming out, and yet there's no evidence they paid any taxes whatsoever. 21 different LLCs that produced nothing other than a way to launder money, and yet our Justice Department claims that the Justice Department claims they have no knowledge of any of this. So, and these are FBI informants. These aren't Republican informants. And then you have a fella, one poor guy who just happens to be gay, and they basically try to out him as if that's a crime nowadays. I live in Knoxville, Tennessee, and it's not a crime. Yet Washington, D.C., all of a sudden, this poor guy, to me, and they tried to out him and his husband. It was just ridiculous. It's completely ridiculous and despicable.
Well, I'm gay in Washington, D.C. I can tell there are a lot of gay people in Washington, D.C. Actually, by the numbers, I think it's one of the most highly concentrated gay cities in America. But that's neither here nor there. I want to get back to this. For critics out there who say, I hear what you're saying, Congressman, but you're wasting your time. You're wasting money on a political hit job. What do you say?
I say they're inaccurate, and they say it has no connection since he was vice president. Well, this transaction occurred when he had announced that he was running for president. So that pretty much is a pretty good tie-in. And of course, we started way back about several years back, and now we're up to the point of where he is running for president. So there is a tie-in. There's a connection there, and I'm afraid that creates a pretty damning pretty damning group of evidence that these folks that we have on these folks. And it just, everybody keeps, the people in the national media say there's no proof, yet the FBI informants, the IRS informants, all these people coming out that are some of the registered Democrats even are coming out and saying, hey, this stuff is here, this exists. And yet saying it doesn't exist doesn't make it go away.
I'm sure if you have bank statements that if that were there, I mean, the American people would be interested to see it if it were there. So again, I think people are just waiting for more concrete evidence linking it to the president. But I want to make sure we talk about money in another way, because we are days away from a government shutdown. I know you want cuts. You tweeted, quote, the U.S. will take in $5 trillion this year. We are on track to spend over $7 trillion. I want to prevent this, yet I'm the radical. Though many people are genuinely scared. They're scared about surviving financially. Yeah. Today you said, I am a no on short-term funding that is going to be passed by the Senate. How do you justify that?
Well, we were basically at home the entire month of August. We have not, we work from home. I actually do more work at home than I do here. But as I've stated many times, you know, September 30th comes around about this time every year, brother. So it's a, you know, we know it's going to come, yet we push this off to the end we want a 30-day continuing resolution. And all that does is just continue the funding of the programs and the things we do not like, continues it on for another month. And they're telling us, leadership told us, we need to pass this so we don't pass any more continued resolutions. Well, that's like telling a crackhead, here, I'm going to give you some more crack to get you off of crack. It doesn't work that way. We are addicted to this money, and then they do another 30-day, and guess what? They push it up against Christmas. And then they say, well, let's just put a big package together. Let's call it an omnibus. And the reality is all this does is protect the power brokers, the lobbyists, and the powerful people in Congress so they can load this thing up with information, with pork and special projects. Because all you do is you'll read down and maybe come to page 5 and you'll find, oh, there's my stuff. There's everything I wanted. And then you don't read the other 1,995 pages. It's like when Speaker Pelosi said we got to pass it to know what's in it.
But as a gut check here,
we have one job, and that's to pass a budget. We have a budget committee. We haven't passed a budget in 30 years. Jody Arrington, God bless him, out of Texas, has a budget,
sir,
and we can do that.
12 appropriations bills. I'm sorry, 12 appropriations bills are never going to get through in the next 3 days. We all know that. And respectfully, I mean, do a gut check with me here. There are about 10 of you holding this up. There are 200 million Americans who want to compromise. Monmouth just put out the poll today. 2/3 of Americans say compromise, including a majority of Republicans. Why not concede that you, sir, are in the minority? And I mean, yes, you can win the majority and then you get your say, but right now you don't get final say.
So does that make me wrong that I'm against spending $7 trillion and we're taking in $5 trillion? Again, we are fiscally corrupt. We have lied to the American public. We've been through these shutdowns, several in the last few years. They average, I think, about 8 days. Every person that is not compensated during the shutdown will be made whole. Veterans won't lose their houses. That's illegal. And this administration, like administrations in the past, has tried to make it hurt the most. They'll put barriers up around veterans things so that our seniors can't come and see the veterans memorials. They'll scare people. Medicaid and Medicare will not be stopped. And so it just, you know, let's do what's right for once. Let's balance this budget. We can do it. And honestly, I bet you probably put in a pretty long day, brother. You seem like you're a hardworking guy. But the average congressman, we come in, we start our meetings at 10:30 in the morning, you know, for when they start these committee meetings.
I used to be a staff assistant. We'll go in. Schedule. I know your schedule. Well, hey, I don't want to lose too much time because I've got to ask you this final question. If Speaker Kevin McCarthy, your leader, looks to Democrats for help on passing that short-term funding bill, we asked you last week, would you vote to remove him from House Speakership? And you said, I'm not there yet. Tonight, are we there yet?
It depends on what he puts in that bill to get it passed. If he puts a bunch of garbage in there, if he puts a bunch of funding for Ukraine, $114 billion when a shutdown might cost us $3 billion, and we're all, wringing our hands of what it will cost. It just depends on what's in it. You know, the federal government shut our whole country down for a year for COVID, yet somehow we survived. And now the sky is falling all of a sudden because we're up against a deadline that we should have addressed this in January.
Congressman Tim Burchett, we appreciate you making the time. I know you have a lot of votes and meetings happening today. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, brother. It's always a pleasure.